Nicolas Cage stars as Nick Cage in the new action comedy film, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Let's talk about it. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my spoiler-free review for the new Nicolas Cage film, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. This is in theaters only right now, and you can check it out. And it's gotten a lot of buzz lately. A lot of people talking about this movie, wanting to kind of see what it's all about, waiting with anticipation. Oh, Nick Cage is going to sort of riff on his career. And so we're going to talk about all of that in just a second here. But first, I do want to welcome you into Dan Reviews It. Thank you for finding this video. And I do a lot of movie and TV reviews here. Click that notification bell down below, too, if you want to get notified for all of my new video drops. But let's talk about this movie because, man, I have gone back and forth on Nick Cage for a long time. So I guess let's start there. My personal history with Nick Cage before we kind of get into this movie. So I was, I guess, a moderate fan back in the day. Raising Arizona and not leaving Las Vegas. What's the one? Honeymoon in Vegas. I've always thought that he was a very good comedic actor. And then he got into the more drama-heavy stuff. I thought some of that was okay. Others didn't quite do it for me. And then the non-stop action stuff. This is really when he became the Nick Cage. Between The Rock and Face Off and Ghost Rider and The Wicker Man. And he became the subject of all the memes and everything. And I was like, dude, this guy actually sucks. Like, I can't stand him. He can't act his way out of a paper bag. The whole thing. But the last, 5 years or so, he started making these really interesting independent films. And I will admit, there's been some things over the course of that time, even when I didn't like him, that I still thought, okay, he's interesting in this, or, oh, he did a good job here. Like the first Kick-Ass movie, or I actually like The Sorcerer's Apprentice, which I know, kind of tanked at the box office, but I thought he was really good in that. And he was a voice in the Spider-Verse. So the guy has really got this interesting career. And what I guess I never understood until a few years ago is that he is actually sort of in on the joke. He gets that, Nick Cage is not maybe to be taken seriously. He gets that. And that's something I don't think I realized years and years ago. So, but he's been making these really interesting independent movies the last few years. And, he still makes the direct-to-DVD or, direct-to-on-demand, stupid action movies, and he'll still do those. But, just last year, he had two movies that I graded very highly. Pig, which I gave an A, and Willy's Wonderland, is that what it was called? Which I gave a B+, I believe. So, two very high marks for, an actor that I sort of wrote off years ago. And when I heard about this movie, I thought, okay, you know what? Nick Cage is great at comedy. I've always said that about him. And so I'm intrigued about what this movie's going to be. He's obviously, playing himself, but a skewed version. And, where does that take us? What kind of movie is it going to be? Etc. So the premise is, I think, probably the less maybe going in the better. So I'm going to just give the bare bones basic plot synopsis, which is that he plays Nick Cage, a version of himself. So he's an actor and this whole thing. And he's made all these, he's made all the real movies that Nick Cage has made. So he is caught between a super fan played by Pedro Pascal, who flies him out and wants to give him $1 million to show up at his birthday party. And he's caught between that and these CIA agents played by Tiffany Haddish and Ike Barinholtz from the Mindy Project. And that's really, I think, all you need to know going into this movie. There are some interesting cameos here as well. I will say one of the other sort of quote-unquote stars is Sharon Hogan, who plays his wife, Olivia. And his daughter, there's someone who plays his daughter in this as well, and Neil Patrick Harris plays his agent. But that's really sort of the basics. But when I heard about the plot of this and, oh, he's doing some sort of tongue-in-cheek kind of meta thing, How's it going to go over? Because he is adept at comedy. But it's also billed as an action movie. So I was like, that's the part I kind of hate about Nick Cage. So here's kind of what I wanted from this movie. Some of which I got, some of which I didn't get. I hoped for a lot of self-referential stuff, talking about Nick Cage's movie career, specific films. And they do this in the movie throughout, both overtly by straight up saying like, oh, I loved you in this movie, or, let's talk about this movie, or sort of more, tongue-in-cheek and sort of not as obvious, which I'm sure I didn't get all the references. I'll be honest, because I have not seen every Nick Cage movie. In fact, a lot of the action ones I have glossed over the years. So I guarantee there were some references in this I did not get that were probably a little bit more vague, or not as spelled out, But the other thing I wanted from this movie was a Nick Cage at like an 11. Like totally going completely bonkers, gonzo Nick Cage. And the problem is, this movie kind of stalls him at like a 7.5. It's good, and it's funny, and I think the meta on top of other meta, works sometimes. Other times I think is, way too shoehorned, way too trying too hard. So I was a little disappointed that the movie wasn't actually as crazy as I wanted it to be. I mean, this is an R-rated action comedy starring Nick Cage as himself. How can it not be the most crazy bonkers thing you've ever seen? Like, that is Nick Cage. So I was disappointed in that fact of it. And also the stuff with his family and his struggles, with his wife and making his 16-year-old daughter happy and, being cool to her. That stuff sort of fell, I think, a little bit flat for me. So I wanted maybe less of that. But in terms of the buddy comedy angle that they do here with Cage and Pascal, right on the money. I mean, everything there with them was very funny. He plays this super fan, so he's like, trotting off lines and mentioning these movies that I have not thought about in 20 years. Some of which I didn't even know Nick Cage did a movie called So-and-So, and they're referencing it in this. So that stuff is where the movie shines. But he never quite got, well, I can't say he never got. There was one or two times towards the end of the movie where I could say, okay, this is Nick Cage at least maybe a 9. But the rest of the movie, like 7.5 is the max. And that was disappointing. He's the head of all these memes. We know Nick Cage to be this crazy guy, on the screen. And, he did this interview a couple of months ago, I guess, talking about, look, yes, I paid a lot of debts with my direct-to-DVD movies, and I've done a lot of movies that maybe were silly or whatever, but I always gave 100%. And I have to admit, that's probably true. I think he is not ever a guy who phones it in. He always gives it his all, no matter what the role requires. And I do think he did what this role required. I just think the script and the direction, who directed this movie, Tom Gormican, who also co-wrote it, I think gave him too much restraint, to be honest. I think they should have said, you know what, Nick, go nuts, and, the world will be better for it. It rarely ever even approaches that level. And that was, for me, a bit disappointing. But through it all, I really did like watching this movie. It's hilarious. Nick Cage, for me, is back on the upswing for sure. And he gets it. He gets the Nick Cage thing. And I appreciate that. So, Massive Talent gets a B from me. Check it out in theaters only. All right, that will do it. And we'll see everybody next time for another movie or TV review on Dan Reviews It. Thanks for watching.